What's up, everybody? How we doing today? Welcome to today's edition of the Gripe Session. And today we are bringing you part two of our last episode, also known as the Shit Show. Yes, my buddy Rick Gonzalez is back. We're going to have some fun today. Part of what Rick is going to be talking about today is getting involved in his local association. Rick has been just recently started doing it. I've obviously been doing it for a lot of years. So I've seen the good, I've seen the bad, and I've seen the ugly. So as opposed to me just talking about it for 5 minutes, let's just get into it.
It's Gripe Session time with your host, George Wanaka.
It's about nothing.
Discussing everything from real estate, current events, a little bit of everything, and the annoying little things that just tick you off.
You can't handle the truth.
What? You didn't know?
Here's your host, George Wanaka.
Your ass better call somebody.
All right, we are getting ready to roll this episode for you. And I just want to thank everybody for popping back on again. I really appreciate it. We've been making a real effort to try to get these podcasts out weekly since the new year. It's been one of my things to try to do. And we're trying to do that, quite frankly. That's really the best way to say it. So I definitely appreciate everybody that downloads these episodes. If you found some value, if you can do me a favor, go on to your iTunes, or now podcast it's called, and give me a rate and review. And then hopefully I will go on the next episode of the Gripe Session and I might read your review. So I would appreciate that. We definitely want to increase the listens to on this podcast, and we'll definitely do that hopefully very shortly with all of your help. So thank you very much, and let's just get right into part two of the Shit Show. What? So I know you started getting involved with your local association. Mm-hmm. How's that been working for you?
So, well, I mean, I've only had one board meeting so far.
Okay.
But yeah, so last year, I really started about 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, I got on my first committee, and I got onto professional development committee. I got onto a local, we call it CAMO, which is community and military outreach.
Okay.
So I got onto those two committees my first year. And I was like, this is kind of cool, getting involved, seeing how things work.
Yeah.
Last year, I did professional development again, and professional development, for the people listening, we focus on the education for our realtors in our local association. So what classes we're going to put on, what events we're going to put on, that kind of stuff. So I did PD again last year, and I did the Leadership Council, which is like a year-long program where they take you and really kind of submerge you into, for lack of a better word, like the politics behind running the association. The different boards and committees, and going to, we just had Great American Realtor Days last week, where everyone goes to Tallahassee and bitches at all the lawmakers, and tries to
Lobby day.
Yeah. So we
have that. We have Lobby Day in New York.
Okay. Yeah. So we call it GARD, Great American Realtor Days, when realtors from all over Florida ascend on Tallahassee.
Yep.
We go to Florida Convention, where they do, they have the big Florida meetings where they vote on all the changes to Florida, real estate.
Yeah.
So you kind of get just immersed in that world, and it kind of just opens your eyes a little bit to why we pay dues and where that money goes, and the benefits to the agents who are realtors and not just real estate agents. So you kind of get a little peek behind the curtain. And so this year, I'm vice chair of PD this year.
Okay.
And I'm on a couple of task force, not really committees, but task force for events. And then I got elected as the director for my county. So I'm on the board of directors. So we've only had one board of directors meeting so far this year. And it's, you get to see that politics side of it that I really don't like. You got this person that doesn't like this person, and it's a lot of infighting, which I think is a waste of energy. But I guess it's good to see. Hopefully with some new people, maybe we can focus on some different things. 'Cause I think there's some things that we're doing really good and some things that we're kind of sucking at. But it's good. I enjoy it so far.
That's good. Yeah, I mean that's actually it's funny you said about the internal politics
Mhm.
of the situation, because it's like that constant battle, right? Of, well, who's right and who's wrong,
Well,
you
and for
know?
us, it's all like geographical,
Yeah.
because you've got me, I'm the director in North Walton County, you got the director of Fort Walton Beach,
Yep.
and so each area is like we're so different because so for the listeners, I'm from Northwest Florida,
Mhm.
the Panhandle. And so like if you find Alabama and go straight down, that's where I am. Not in the part. So everyone from New York thinks Florida is like Orlando and
Oh, I
Miami.
know.
You know, you guys think like the Panhandle is not Florida, which it really isn't, which is why we call ourselves LA, Lower Alabama. But yeah, so find Alabama, go straight south until you hit the water, and that's where I am. Gorgeous beaches, but we are Florida. But so there's a huge like vacation rental place. I mean, a lot of you guys probably own like vacation homes down here. And then we got like 3 bases. So there's lots of military presence on the north side. And then there's a little bit of residential mixed in there. But so each location has a very different market. And so some of these rules and rule changes affect each little segment very differently. And so everyone is fighting for what's best for them. And it's like, you want to say, can't we all just get along? But no, we can't.
No,
Everyone wants what they want. It's hard to find what's best for everybody.
exactly. And I mean, the one thing that's frustrated me, and obviously, a lot of people know that I've been involved locally, I've been involved at the state level, I've been involved nationally. The one thing that irks me about the politics of the situation, and I don't know how you guys deal with it in Florida, or even if you have this, because I've been through what you guys did, like the leadership summit,
Yeah.
where we had a leadership academy at the state, and I did that a number of years ago.
Okay.
And one of the things that to me was, I don't want to say kind of hypocritical, but that's really the best way to say it. It was kind of really hypocritical, is trying to teach people to think outside the box, right? Like you and I are doing that right now with this podcast. Like how many real estate professionals or realtors do we know that have their own podcasts that are now pushing the limits of the next thing?
Yeah.
And continuing with the things like the code of ethics, et cetera, et cetera. So when you take that outside the box thinking, which was part of criteria that we addressed in leadership, and then you go back to the whole politics of the conversation, and because you're outside the box, you're a rebel, you're a maverick, you're a jerk off, you're this, you're that. And it's sitting back and you go, wait a second, like,
Yeah.
I was told that this is kind of what we need to be looking at, is outside the box stuff. Like, did I miss something?
Well, no, you didn't. But I think it's a big topic. Like I know, because I've been in real estate for almost 10 years now, which in the big scheme of things for a lot of agents is still a rookie.
Yep.
And then for a lot of people who are out in the first 2, 10 years is a long time. So I'm kind of in the middle, I think. But real estate is I don't want to say an old person's game, but there's a lot of senior people who have 15, 20, 25 plus years in the business. And they've been doing it a certain way for a very long time, and it's worked, and that's great. And I think that any change, they bucket, and so you get some of those old heads in the leadership positions, which is why our leadership academy, we're really pushing to get some younger people in there, because if you don't change out that old guard at the top where they're making the decisions, things just don't happen. And unless you can kind of become very agile, the speedboat versus the aircraft carrier type thing, it really sucks, because 3 years, 3 years, Facebook Live was brand new, just 3 years ago. And now look at the technology. Facebook Live is old hat, it's still very popular, still works really good.
Yeah.
But you would think that Facebook Live has been around forever. It's just 3 years.
Yeah.
And the thing is the real estate, world is really having a hard time changing, at the association level, not for us agents, because we can do whatever we want.
We do whatever we want.
But the association level, with all the politics and the red tape and all the association, BS behind it, they can't have an effective social media account, because everything's got to be run through the association before it can get it's got to be approved before you can be
I,
posted.
I love
Hate
that
all
you
that.
just went there. I love
hate
that
it.
you just went there because I've been watching some stuff go out on those accounts, and I'm looking at the engagement, and I'm like,
Terrible.
you're getting the same people because you're not putting anything of value out. And that's my biggest argument. I'm like,
Mhm.
where is my value proposition of this whole conversation? It's like,
Right.
I get this information 5, 6, 7 different times. The
Right.
only people liking, commenting, whatever, are the people that have drank the Kool-Aid already.
Mhm.
So what exactly are you actually doing? You're not doing a damn thing. And again, I may be the rebel because I've been very involved in it, and I'm the guy that's going to. I call myself a legacy kid
Yeah.
because I'm a second generation realtor.
Yeah. Because
And
your pops isn't. Yeah.
yeah, because my dad was in it, past state president, et cetera,
Right.
yada, yada, yada. But in the same breath, like there are things that like boggle my mind nowadays with association work.
Oh yeah.
And maybe because, I've been, again, a president of 2 boards, I've served state, national, and I listen to some of this stuff and I'm going, okay, time out. Like some of this stuff just doesn't make any sense to me. And, and I'll give you one perfect example, right? So you've probably heard this already. So when you go into a director's meeting,
Okay.
right, and you go into your executive session and you go have a conversation about whatever issue that happens to be, right? Whatever the vote is, it stays within that room.
Right.
And the who voted which way is not published. It's not public information. It's not anything. Am I right?
Yeah. We actually just talked about this at our first meeting because there was a question about because we had the recent election.
Yeah.
And there were people that were asking, like, hey, did I almost win? Was I close?
Yeah.
Because they just say who won. They don't publish numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently members are allowed to request that information, but no, the actual the
Votes.
results are published, but the actual votes, no.
So, well, I'm not necessarily talking about, elections and stuff like that, because that's one thing. I'm really talking about, so your board has an issue, right? And you go into executive session and you have your vote on that individualized issue.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So the issue people say is if they don't like how we did this or we voted,
Right.
you vote them out the next time.
Sure.
But the problem is, and now granted, I am Polish, so this may come off a little like it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and I understand I'm Polish, so this kind of goes there. If you're not letting people know how people voted on a specific issue, how in the blue hell do you vote the right people out? I mean, you sit back and we have conversations about people in Congress, the president, your local elected officials. You have their voting record,
Right.
but yet you can't vote people out that should be voted out because you don't know how the hell they voted. Now, am I Polish? This does not make sense to anybody else other than me.
No. Well, I mean, it's, I didn't understand why, we can't just share the results. I mean, why can we only share the results, not the actual votes? Like, if I'm running and I lose by 30 votes and I'm like, oh man, I was so close, maybe that inspires me to do better and try again next time. If I get my ass kicked and I got 1 vote, maybe I'm like, maybe it's not for me, but I don't know. So, but here's the thing. Well, let me ask you this.
Yep.
So in the current state of affairs in real estate,
yep.
Do you think that local and state associations are necessary? And do you think they're going to be around in the next 5 to 10 years?
In my opinion, I believe that you're always going to feel the need for local.
Okay.
Always.
Okay.
Because you need you need a initial point of contact, if you will, right? You need somebody, as the expression goes, boots on the ground, right? More and more, and I know people are going to listen to this and they're going to watch this on YouTube and they're going to say, "You see, we told you this is, he shouldn't have ever been put there in the first place." I'm starting. That's why this is a shit show. I'm starting to think that the state association is going to move away, because initially, if you know how the 3-way agreement was set up, national, state, local. When this was set up initially, the information filtered down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So national brought the information to state, state brought it to local.
Mm-hmm.
But now we have all of these things, right? All of these new technologies, things like email, things like podcasting, things like video, things like all of
New
that kind of
technology
stuff.
like email.
Yeah, email, which nobody fucking watching anyway. But again, all of the information now you can have at the click of a mouse.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to start going back to value propositions, right? So what do I get if I do this? Now, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to start going through numbers, and you've probably looked at budgets before, obviously now that you're a director, and you see some of the numbers that we're talking about, and you go, okay, well, what's necessary and what's not, right?
Mm-hmm.
We talked about education components previously. Well, let me rephrase that. In a great picture, I've always talked about it. We have great education components, 1,000%. But can I go online and get an education component for my real estate license? Of course I can, right? You can probably too in Florida. So I don't, I'm a little bit of I try to look at things and say, what's the next thing? And I think we're getting to a point where I don't know if it's 5 years away. I don't know if it's 10 years away. I think that there's going to be almost like a major, I hate to use the term major earthquake, and all of a sudden everyone's going to go running for the hills and go, oh my God, what the hell just happened?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, I tell you what happened. Nobody's been paying attention for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Of what's been going on, where we're going, why is there no, see, when you don't have any engagement on the platforms that like you and I are doing now, and a lot of our other associates are doing right now, that's not a good thing. It means nobody's listening to the conversation.
And so part of the the struggle that we're trying to address right now is, at our association, we offer free education for our members. Unless
it's not free.
Well,
stop.
Included.
Yes.
So you pay your dues, and
Yep.
any classes you take that are not a designation.
Yep.
Designation class is still extra, but any regular classes are included in your dues.
Yes.
Right. So
we did that when I was president locally, and then they sometimes put the designation dues in there as well.
So we're small markets. We have like 42 to 4,400 agents, depending on the day of the week. The attendance for these classes can be pitiful at times, to the point where we have a hard time getting instructors and booking because the attendance is not there. And, so my argument has been on the PD committee in the past. You've got people like your Keller Williams, and now that I'm with EXP, we have a huge online training.
Yep.
And I know there's independent, real estate training places that offer online training.
Mm-hmm.
So with all of this online education available through NAR and Florida Realtors and all these other companies, what's the incentive for people to drive an hour to an office to sit and listen to someone when I can sit in my jammies and do it on my laptop at 2:00 in the morning if I want to, because it's on demand.
Yeah.
Things like that, I think, is where you said value prop. Like, I don't know, what does the association provide, and how can they continue that prop moving forward, where people are going to want to pay, because dues are not cheap.
No.
And I think you're starting to see a lot of people, at least I'm seeing it in certain chats, when they're saying like, hey, do I really need to be a realtor?
Mm-hmm.
Like, can I just be a licensed agent and still do this without paying all this money? And now with the public being so, or having access to so much of that same information, the buyers and sellers are more educated,
Mm-hmm.
or at least they have access to more information. I'm not going to say that they've actually taken the time to learn it.
No.
But they can fact check you pretty quick.
Yeah. I definitely think that there's definitely a value in being a member of the National Association, and the rights and privileges that kind of come with that. It's just when you come down and you start looking at layers, and that's when, those associations have to do a better job. Now, again,
do you think NAR does a good job?
I think NAR does a good job being that they are such a big level. I think that um, uh, their lobbying wing has been very, very good, at least for us and for the, for pretty much from a nationwide perspective. Because again, you're looking at nationwide potential issues that affect things.
Yeah.
And people say, "Oh, you're Mr. NAR." I'm like, first of all, I ain't Mr. NAR. Like Dustin likes to say that, which, I'm pro association, but I'm also pro adapting and evolving. And that's where I think that some of the places where we're at, you sit back and you go, we're not doing that. And because the messenger and the best part about the association, quite frankly, is when you don't see eye to eye with people, and as you was talking about the politics of the conversation, and they blacklist you or whatever it happens to be. I tell people all the time, they're like, "Oh, it's terrible what they did to this one, or they did to that one, or they did to you." And I'm like, I've been thrown out of better bars. Like, I'm a volunteer, and you're a volunteer. I take away from my family, I take away from my business, I take away from a lot of different things that I want to do to go and give my opinion, to not go and just sit there and go, okay, okay. Oh my God. And the new thing is, oh, thank you for all of the, I don't know if you've seen these, but they make me laugh. Thank you for your time devoted to our association. What the fuck? Like, seriously, like, I read some of these things and I just start laughing now, because it's like, okay, yes, you're welcome for appreciating it, but why don't you come up and talk about it and kind of go from there? It's like, no, but nobody wants to do that. We'll just, make it look like we're doing all of this stuff and kind of go from there. It starts to get underneath the skin a little bit.
Well, one of the things that I think that the associations need to do is maybe a better job of just educating the agent on what they actually provide. Yeah. There's so many good resources at NAR. Have you done the C2EX?
I am C2X certified. Okay. I was probably one of the first guys to get knocked down. I was very early in the beginning.
So I did it last year after we came back from Florida convention. And that was good because there's a lot of resources that
oh, absolutely.
Kind of brought to mind, like, that I didn't know I had at NAR. And I think because it's so easy to come in, like, you don't have to do anything superficial. Take your little test, take your little course and your post-license course, and then everyone is just focused on generating leads and selling houses.
Yep.
So when they get hit with that bill at the end of the year for their dues, it's a negative.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I just don't think there's enough push to get the information to them on, like, hey, this is why you're paying, this is why it's important. Because like you said, the lobbying side, which is, again, the political side, is a part that I don't really enjoy getting involved with too much. But the more you learn about it, you do see the value of how it protects, the rights for the public, but also our business.
Yeah.
So it is important, but man, there's so much that's going to have to change.
Yeah.
It's harsh.
I think this year, I've been a big RPAC supporter for since I came into this business. I think I'm going into the RPAC Hall of Fame in May down in DC.
There's an RPAC Hall of Fame?
Yeah, the National RPAC Hall of Fame. So, that's when you give a lot of money and they go, okay, we're going to put your name up on the wall.
It's like Cooperstown for donations.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's, I definitely see, as you like to say, the value, but I think part of our problem, and I talked about this on a different podcast, and I don't think it's just an association problem. I think it's also a realtor problem. Is we have a bad problem that we don't tell our story, right? Like we don't tell like what we do away from selling real estate, right? Whether we coach, whether we volunteer with our local churches, whether we are involved in soccer or whatever it happens to be. But it also relays into associations at the point. I think that we don't do a good job of telling our members, just like the realtors have to tell our story to the public. To me, the associations need to be telling their story to their members to say, hey, here's what we do. Now, you know it, I know it. doing a podcast every week or trying to do one every week, like I'm trying to do that this year, it takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of education. It takes a lot of push. It takes a lot of just things to get it out. And that to me is one of the things that's quite frankly missing. You know, you might have one person do it one year because they're the rebel or the maverick or the one that embraces technology. And then you won't see it ever again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, the consistency of the messages is important. I mean, we're trying at our association, like they've started to do like a weekly live by some of the staff at our association, kind of almost like a little mini state of the association, like a little 1 minute update. Hey, here's what's going on at ECAR. And they're dabbling with the way that's put together and the information that's getting put out. But again, like you said, the engagement is not there. And because we as realtors have because we've been forced to get the information quickly, create our own groups on Facebook where we can put the information out freely. Now nobody goes to the official source because it takes so long to come out. So the engagement's not there. But they're trying. They start to see where they need to be. But again, there's so much, you know, red tape and restrictions from the association side that it's hard for them to get onto that medium, which is funny because, you know, you look at the politicians today. I mean, they're all over Twitter like every 2 seconds. Everyone. So it's like, you know, well, if the president can do it, why can't the association get out there and put out some information without having to go through 72 hours of checks and, you know, this, that, and the other before it can be released?
I mean, and especially nowadays, we're in such a want it yesterday type of a society that, you know, okay, by the time you came out with this, I already knew about it. You know, why do I need to watch this now?
And that's the thing. If I have to wait a week to watch it on the association site, but I can get it over here the day it comes out, I'm not going to go and pay attention to your site.
Nope.
And that's the problem. They're putting a lot of energy right now into putting information out on their website. But the thing is by the time it gets out there, it's old news, so nobody's going to watch it.
Nobody gives a rat's rear end.
No, it's a big waste of time.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And again, this is not a knock on all associations or specific associations, because that'll be the thing that I get. I'll get people calling me, knocking them again.
I'm sure someone's going to listen. Well, hopefully nobody listens to this from my local area. But if they do, I guarantee someone will say something at the next board meeting.
Yeah, well, again, this again is called the Shit Show for a reason. This is two guys just talking about what's going on in real estate and what opinions are. And you could agree with us or you could disagree with us. But you know, the best part is if you disagree with anything that's being said, hey, guess what? Shoot me an email, shoot me a text, and the next time we do a Shit Show, I'll go through some of them and say, hey, this person wrote in after we did the last Shit Show and said this, because I have no problem answering the conversation or answering the question.
Yeah.
And what I've found, and I don't know about yourself, but I've found that anytime you sometimes question what's going on, people take it as an attack and not as a critique or a way of potentially learning something. Like I look at things nowadays, and I'm my own worst critic. You know, people say, well, you know, the gripe session is negative. And I'm like, have you ever watched it? And have you ever listened to it? It's not all negative. It's me poking fun, which is what some of this does.
You're allowed to bitch without being negative.
That's right.
Know, sometimes you just have to get the conversation started so you can get through the initial, you know, bullshit and actually get to a solution. And it's the conversations that need to happen. That's the thing that needs to happen is more conversations. My biggest issue with my local, and here's the part. So if they tune in now at whatever we're at, about 40 minutes in, this is the part I would really like everyone to hear. One of my biggest gripes about locally, and I don't know if it's this way up in New York, but it seems like there's a big unwillingness to collaborate locally. Like we all we're all warm and fuzzy at the social events. But there really is. I mean, there's a small handful of agents here with different brokers that will actually collaborate. The majority of agents here really want to play their cards close to their chest and want to be uber competitive. And that just drives me fucking nuts.
Listen, and I have news for you. You're not alone. I've
That'd be
served on
crazy.
boards over the years, and I've asked, why are certain people on the board? And people go, well, why? What's the problem? And I said, I don't think I've heard them open their mouth outside of put a cup of coffee in it or the Danish that we get with the board meetings. And that to me that's the fundamental problem that I have.
Mm-hmm.
Is we're taught, and I had just recently had this conversation with one of the trainers that I know that comes in and does trainings for the board before they get ready to start the year. And I said, where did this come from? And he said, well, people don't want to be attacked for what they did in a board meeting. And I said, okay, I can understand that, but if you can't have it both ways. You can't sit back and say, well, if they don't like what we did, we voted them out. But in the other aspect, if people don't know what your voting record was or exactly what happened, how do they vote you out? How do we know the right people to have on there, the forward thinkers, the one that kind of do stuff, and the people that just sit there and don't do anything? And again, that's not to degrade or knock any of those people down. I get it. Being on a board is a lot of work. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort to serve on these boards. I get it. But again, the whole purpose is to be there and to be present and to try to make a difference in the industry. And the problem that I've seen from a personal experience, it sounds like you're dealing with some of the same stuff. And I guess it kind of goes around on the boards, is that we're giving these guidelines of how to operate. And some of the times these guidelines, you just look at it and go, but then how do you get, if somebody's not good, how do you get them off?
Well, so different type of association, but my homeowners association where I live, when you read through some of their rules, you can tell very easily that rule was written by a guy sitting in an office that had never been physically out to our location and understood the real life application of what that rule is trying to say. Sure. It just doesn't make sense in real life. And I think, sometimes these people have to look like, okay, when was this written? Who was it written by? Does it really apply? And can we change it? Because a lot of these things are like, hey, let's just take a generic set of, association rules, and then we'll tweak it as we go. And sometimes we're playing by rules that do not make any fucking sense at all.
I sit back and, I look at it and I go, listen, I'm old school, but I'm a young guy because I'm doing this like 25 years and I've grown up in this business. So to me, I kind of can see like I'm almost a bridge between old school and new school a little bit. That's what I like to think, is I could see why we used to do things in the past. And I could also see where we need to go in the future, because we don't practice real estate the way that we practiced when I started 25 or 26 years ago. Everything is different. Right? I remember walking around with the MLS books. I had this conversation with a couple agents the other day. You had to go get the MLS book once a month to see what was new. Yeah. So if that's all changing and changes quick, why is everything else not changing that quick?
What? I mean,
I listen
how it's
to
going to be in the next 10 years.
Yeah. I listen to this argument all the time as well. You have to, in order to make the change you want to see, you got to get to the mountaintop, so to speak. And I'm like, well, wait a second. If I can be as effective in making change and not get to the mountaintop, and they go, well, how the hell are you going to do that? Well, I have a platform. I have a podcast. I have YouTube. I have Facebook. I can make a difference that way. Yeah. To look at some of these things, and guess what? That's another way that I can facilitate change, because, as you know, Gary Vee talks about, I only care about one thing, is historically accurate. Because as I started to tell you earlier, there's no voting records of anything, right? But you know what there is? There's still video. I can still go back and watch what I said 3 years ago, and did it apply to what it is right now, and then go, oh, by the way, remember who said this? Yeah. So that's where I think that, some of these cases have to get flipped on their axis right away, or associations at some point. But,
So real quick, just to kind of make a little U-turn here, you mentioned something earlier about, people like sending you questions and you addressing them.
Yep.
One of my new favorite podcasts is called The Lift. Have you listened to it?
No. The
So
Lift? Let me write that down.
yeah, it's called The Lift. It's a new podcast. I mean, relatively new, just in the last month or so they started.
Is that on the
Um,
agent? Is that on the industry syndicate?
Nope, they're not industry
Oh, no?
syndicate.
Oh,
Nope.
okay.
They're just it's the guys who own and operate Client Giant,
Okay.
and I mean, good guys. They're very easy to listen to. They got a good sense of humor, and they're just I guess I don't know, have a little bit of that factor, that Brome factor that kind of, I'm like, yeah,
Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
he's well, so the owner, the CEO, or as he calls himself, the chief day maker, Jay O'Brien over at Client Giant.
Okay.
He he won Inman Awards and all kinds of fun stuff, but he's kind of like a little bit of a Gary V. He's a black t-shirt, tattooed, very against the grain kind of guy, just doing his thing, and it's working. And I think that's what I like. He's kind of a little bit of an asshole, but he's my kind of asshole. But
There's a lot of that going around, huh, Rick?
There is. But you should listen to their podcast, because the format that they use, I really, really like.
Okay.
They do more. Each episode is a story.
Okay.
That kind of frames a reason why they do the business they do, which is offering exceptional service in our business. And then at the end, so the podcast itself is only like maybe 10 or 15 minutes. But then at the end, they do a Q&A where they'll answer questions about the previous week's podcast episode.
Okay.
And so when you listen to it, what I really like about it is each episode links to another episode. So if someone comes in and they just listen to episode 4, at the end, they're going to listen to a quick 5-minute conversation answering questions about the previous one, which is going to send that person, oh, hey, that sounds pretty interesting. I'm going to go back and listen to this one. And they're getting a ton of engagement, of engagement. And because it's so short, I mean, maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes tops for everything, for an intro, the actual story, and then a Q&A at the end. But you should check out the format. I think it's really good. I'm going to try to change my Modern Agent to be a little bit more along that line as far as the format.
Yeah, I've been trying to keep mine, my podcast for the most part, kind of between that 20 to 30 minute kind of situation with the intro and the outro.
Yeah.
But the other half of that is, and again, it's as the expression goes, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah.
I find that those are really easier for me to listen to, like the ones for like an hour.
Yeah.
Like Rogan's is like 3 hours. It takes like 4 days to listen to one episode, and he puts one out every freaking day.
Right.
And I'm looking at my podcast thing. It's like, you have 693 episodes that you haven't listened to. And I'm like, I probably won't.
So I was a guest on the Fired Up podcast last year, which is Krista Mashore. She's a realtor out in California.
Okay.
And one of the things that she told me, because I told her, I said, a lot of my podcasts run 60 minutes, I think my most listened to podcast was over an hour. And she says, that's fine, but then just chop it up into 3 20-minute episodes. She says, now instead of posting 1 hour podcast for 1 week, make it 3 weeks worth of content and just edit it properly, where, now you've got people that want to listen next week because they want to hear how the conversation ended. And so now you got people on the hook for 3 weeks. That's going to drive your engagement up. And I'm like, holy shit, I'm over here stressing myself out of putting out a podcast every single week, when every time I sit down and talk to someone, I've got 3 weeks worth of content if I'm smart about it. And she was like, you dummy, you're wasting content and stressing yourself out. So that's
a really good idea, actually. Right? That you say that. That's really good idea.
And then you take little bits and do the whole Gary V thing and do the Instagram and the audiograms.
Yep.
She says, yeah, but don't put it out as an hour podcast. Put it out as 3 20-minute podcasts, and now you've got shit in the can for weeks.
Part 1, part 2, and part 3.
Yeah, and then if you stick to that format of, hey, let's answer some questions from last week. One of the things that Jay and Jeff over at Client Giant do is they actually have when people want to have a question, they have to call in and they record themselves and asking the question. So they'll play the person asking the question. So you get, I don't know, there's just a different vibe to it where you hear the person asking the question, and then you hear Jeff and Jay answering it. It's a good back and forth.
Yeah, I like that. That's a couple of really good ideas. I especially like the call-in one. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's neat. I'm telling you, those guys over there at Client Giant, for any realtors that are listening, if you're not using Client Giant, and I don't get a fee. I'm trying to get Jay to pay me like an affiliate fee, but we haven't worked it out yet. But you should definitely check them out, clientgiant.com. They do the gifting,
Okay.
and follow-ups and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, awesome company. I've been using them for almost a year now, and the response has been ridiculous. Clients are loving it.
Yeah. Well, we've gone about 45 minutes, which quite frankly, you and I talked about this. I'm like, when we started thinking about this concept of doing this shit show, if you will, we said, listen, we just get on and just start talking. And all of a sudden we're going to look and the clock's going to be 40 minutes or an hour of stuff. I definitely got a lot more stuff that I want to hit with you, but we're going to save that for the next edition of the shit show. But anything you want to leave everybody with today?
No, I guess, is it mostly realtors that listen to your show? Who's listening?
That's a great question. I'm not really sure who's listening.
I don't know what to leave.
It might be nobody, but
it could be. I think my thing is like, regardless of what business you're in, if you're in business for anything, whether it's a hobby, whatever, start doing something, whether it be a blog or a YouTube channel or a podcast. And I just think podcast is just the easiest route to go. It's like I said, the barrier of entry is so low. And start getting your message out, because at the end of the day, whatever it is you're doing, the only difference maker between you and who else is doing what you're doing is your story and who you are. So just turn on your phone, download that free Anchor app if that's all you want to do to start. Just start telling your story, and you'll be amazed at how supportive people will be and how quickly you can learn along the way just by reaching out to people that are doing it, like George and me. Get some tips, and it's crazy. I've only been doing my podcast for a little over a year. Brome's been doing his for 2, and Brome is like nuts now.
He's
interviewing all the TV stars, and I mean he's taking this shit and ran with it. And then I was ranked number 27 in all marketing podcasts on Apple, which I thought was just nuts. So yeah, just start doing it. Whatever you're gonna do, start doing it. Don't wait.
Yeah, see, that's what I want to do. Like, I want to get, like, my goals are to try to get to your level and obviously and beyond, and try to get to Brome. But Brome is just so far ahead of everybody else that
but the thing is he only started 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So the thing is if you get consistent with it, like you said earlier.
Yep.
2 years from now, you can be where Brome is.
Yeah. I mean,
maybe further ahead, because you can ask Brome how he got there and he'll tell you.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the biggest thing for me is just that consistency piece, as you like to say. But that was some great tips already about taking an episode and breaking it up into 3 separate ones.
Yeah.
So I like that. That literally I'm going to write down once we finish today. So
I would do it.
Yeah. Again, if anybody listening to this podcast has any questions that you heard through this shit show today, literally, feel free to send me an email at gswanaka@wanakarealtors.com, or if you want to send it to Rick, what's your email address? Let him know.
My email is rick.gonzalez@exprealty.com.
Yeah. So, and that's all we're going to hold on for today. I want to thank Rick for coming on, and we'll definitely catch you on the next edition of the shit show, as we're affectionately referring it to. And we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, George.
Thanks for listening to The Gripe Session. Please follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.